So, as you guys know, last week I unboxed and gave my first impressions of this guy, the iPad 8th generation from 2020. Here is the review. As always, timestamps for everything that I'm going to be talking about are going to be linked down below in the description, so make sure that you skip around to whatever part interests you most. Alright, so let's get on to the build and body of this iPad. So, this iPad is actually made of aluminum, and because of that, this iPad feels extremely lightweight in the hand. But not only is the iPad extremely light and portable, but it also feels extremely premium because of that build material. Regardless of the pricing, which we'll definitely get to, if you pick this up, it's not going to feel like a budget product. It's gonna feel like a substantial thing that you've bought, and it's gonna feel good in the hand. Moving further along the body of this iPad is a really nice big screen. Now this screen is something that I really like about this iPad, especially as somebody that has come from the 7.9-inch iPad. This iPad screen is 10.2 inches, which is noticeably different than the 9.7-inch iPad I was coming from. But regardless of the screen size, this iPad screen is bright, vibrant, and even really nice for writing with something like an Apple Pencil or a Logitech crayon. Either way, you're not going to be disappointed with the screen that you're getting on this iPad. My only complaint, which is a small one at that, is the fact that the screen is not laminated and it is noticeable when you are taking notes. Other than that, it is not noticeable at all, and the screen is still really nice to look at. Moving further along the body, you're going to notice that there's actually smart connectors, which opens up a whole new world of possibilities in terms of peripherals that you can add to your iPad, such as keyboard cases and other things that you can add directly onto the iPad. The only thing is that to get real work done on this iPad, those things begin to become necessities, but more on that later. You have your standard things that come on iPads, such as Apple branding, the power button on the top, as well as the volume rockers, but the final thing that is on the externals of the iPad is that camera. And this camera is honestly passable. I mean, it's not gonna blow your mind or anything, and it's definitely enough for scanning documents and whatever else you need to do as a student, but other than that, there's nothing really else that you can do with it. And speaking of the cameras, HD on the front-facing FaceTime camera would have been really nice to see, especially with everything that's going on, but nonetheless, it's passable and will get the job done. Alright, next up, let's talk internals. This iPad is rocking the A12 chip, and what that basically means is that everything on this iPad feels extremely snappy and extremely smooth. When you're doing simple things like loading in apps or being inside of a program, it doesn't feel like you have to wait on anything. Everything feels fast and it's always responsive, and you don't have to wait on anything. Everything just works without the iPad lagging behind. If you want to see me go more in depth on what this A12 processor can actually do, I definitely recommend that you check out some of the tests that I did regarding gaming and other things so that you can see how it performs. Alright, next up is the storage, and as I said in my impressions, the model that I got has 32 gigabytes of storage, and I'll be honest, in 2020 that is just simply not enough. But it's not impossible to work with. See, for example, the thing that takes up the most space on people's iPads, phones, whatever it is usually photos and videos. And a great workaround that I've personally found is Google Photos, because you can easily sync everything for free with only losing a little bit of quality that you won't even notice. It's little hacks like this that make this iPad work even if you do have to buy the 32 gigabyte model, and you don't have to feel bad about getting that model, because as a student, I've never felt like 32 gigabytes was never enough. As a content creator, I can't say the same thing, and to put it simply, that's just not enough. Let's talk software. This iPad comes with iPadOS 14, and it runs extremely smooth on this iPad, as you'd imagine. Now, I've talked about iOS 14 as a whole in a previous video, but basically my main complaint is still the same even on this iPad. I would like to see the widgets become more versatile in order to push the boundaries of productivity when it comes to using this iPad as like your main computing device. Scribble is a feature that I never really got into. I mean, you guys have seen the typing videos, and I mean, writing it out just seems like kind of a waste of time. But regardless, iPadOS was already really smooth, and Apple didn't really have to fix anything, and they definitely didn't with this iPad. However, with the addition of widgets on this iPad, now there is room to innovate and improve. Finally, let's talk about the battery life. This battery life can honestly last you full days. I mean, I even found myself having this iPad last multiple days if I really stretched it out. Not only that, but this battery won't even let you down during really intense tasks, and again, I suggest that you watch the test video for a more in-depth analysis of the battery life on this iPad. Alright, so what are the best features when it comes to having this iPad? The first thing for me is that just Plain and simply, this thing is really fun to use. Something about using the iPad, interacting with the screen, going into apps, and just having this experience just makes me want to use it more than my own laptop. This could be the intuitive touch controls or maybe the portability, but regardless, this thing is just fun to use. Next up, portability. Portability is really where this iPad shines. Because it's so light and thin, you can throw this thing in a bag and barely notice that it's there, yet still have all the computing power of the A12 processor. All that for something that is this thin and this light is just a win for me. And finally, this could be a best feature or a drawback depending on who you are, but when I'm using this iPad, it feels like it's promoting work hard, play harder. And what I mean by that is that there are some fundamental things that are missing on this iPad. For one, there is a lack of extensions that really do increase productivity. You should definitely check out that video if you want to see some of those, as well as features that you just find on desktops that are not on a mobile device. Now, don't get me wrong, things like the Apple Pencil, the Logitech Crown, and even the Slim Folio keyboard case, they all make this thing a productivity machine, but those are add-ons and don't actually come with the iPad. Nonetheless, you can work hard with this device, sure, but where this shines, I think, is in the play harder. Consuming content and playing games on this iPad is something that's really enjoyable, especially with the A12 processor. We're talking multitasking, putting on YouTube videos and watching that, and of course running games are not going to be a challenge for this device. And when I'm using it, it actually feels like it's incentivizing me to play more and, you know, consume more content, play more games, because it's so capable of doing that. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I mean, it just depends on the type of person that you are. But finally, let's talk about the real drawbacks that come with this iPad. Like I said in the previous point, you lack some of that productivity and exchange it for having that play mentality, which is just something that I'm not necessarily a fan of. But of course, there are things that desktops just simply do better than a mobile device. Like for example, when you think of doing something on a computer, there are so many different tools and resources at your disposal to make that thought immediately go to action. But with an iPad, it's not really the same, and there's a lot of workarounds that you have to do yourself. And because of that, it slows you down and really adds up over time. And finally, what I alluded to earlier was the keyboard and the pencils. If you want to get real work done, those are basically necessities that you need to have with this iPad. Because without it, this iPad really does feel like a very nice consumption device, but then anything outside of that, it feels like you're selling yourself short. Now, this only applies to you if your iPad is your main computing device, but if you're looking to get real work done, especially as a student, having that external keyboard and that external stylus that you could use on the iPad is basically a necessity. But let's talk about price for a second. When you pick up this iPad, you're just simply getting insane value at this price. It costs $329, which is $429 for all my Canadian viewers, and that is just a deal that you cannot beat. Not to mention that there's basically no competition with a device like this, and you're getting all the essentials from the Pro line of devices just without any of the luxuries. Now, there are things that I may want on this iPad like Final Cut Pro, but there are always workarounds that are available, such as LumaFusion, and that really just applies for everything on this iPad. If you feel like you're missing a feature on this, like you can't type on this iPad or you can't do research on it, you definitely can. You're just gonna have to find a workaround for it. But the funny thing is that nothing on the Pro makes this device not Pro, if that makes sense. What I mean by that is that the Pro devices, yeah, they're probably prettier, they're probably faster, but when it comes to the core fundamentals, the functionality that you're getting in the iPad, those two things are one and the same. What you're getting in the Pro in terms of functionality, you're getting in this iPad. At the end of the day, it's do you want to pay for those extra luxuries, or do you want to buy only what you're going to need and what you're going to use? And it's for that reason alone that no matter who is picking this up, student or not, you're just simply going to get a lot of value from this device. And just like this iPad could provide you a lot of value, if this video has provided you any value, it would really help my channel if you left a like and even subscribed if you want more videos just like this one. More videos are on the way, so hit the bell icon if you don't want to miss them. I'm Matt, and thanks for watching.